if you can just start by telling a little bit about yourself and about your background, why we're here today.
Okay, so I mean, I'll start with where I am right now. I am 40, going on 41 this year. I had my first child at the age of 39, and yeah, and then I decided to be a single mom by choice. And when people ask me, like, when did that journey begin? I always start with, I mean, I can always go as far back as as like my past relationships, but I would say when the idea and the yeah, when the idea really set in and was like, okay, this is the choice for me. I would say that journey started in 2019 when I decided to freeze my eggs. So, I was 35 years old. I had just turned 35 that May, and I wasn't in a committed relationship. And I always, you always envision like you get married and have a kid and all that stuff. So I was in a committed relationship, and I was like, okay, if by the time I meet somebody, get married, I'll probably be up there in age by the time I have a kid. So let me preserve my eggs, because I remember a friend of mine when I was in my 20s, she was so open about freezing her eggs. And I remember like tucking it behind my head, like, oh, okay, that's a good option. That's a good, it's a good cool thing. But I still have so many years to go. So like I don't have to worry about that. And so imagine like now in my 30s, mid 30s, not in a relationship. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let me preserve my biological clock. Let me freeze my biological clock. And so I decided to freeze my eggs. And I settled on the clinic in Barbados because I had a relative who had been trying to conceive for years, and different using different clinics and stuff. And Barbados Fertility Clinic was the first one that gave her child on her first try IVF. So I asked her, I was like, does the clinic also do freezing eggs, or do they just do IVF? And she talked about the cost being so much more effective, like more affordable. And so I reached out to them on my 35th birthday, because I remember hearing, I can't remember who told me, but I remember hearing that like, if you're gonna freeze your eggs, like do it by the age of 35, right? Obviously the earlier you do it, the better. So here I am at 35. I'm like, okay, I'm reaching that limit, so let me do this. And I reached out to them and I asked if, what it's like to freeze my eggs and and before you know it, that November, I was in Barbados freezing my eggs, and I was quite fertile. So, so I froze my eggs thinking, okay, I'm going to buy myself some time to meet Mr. Right and, get married and have a kid and all that stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I had time. And I mean, it was just like this freedom, honestly, because I even started dating differently, right? Because before that, when I was dating, I'm just like, okay, this is like this needs to be the father of my kid. So like, there's like red flags, but you're like, oh no, this needs to be the father of my kid. Like I need to look past this and all that. So when I froze my eggs and I no longer had, I like to tell people, I no longer had my uterus as a third wheel on a date, right? So my uterus was no longer like, get pregnant. So with that, that pressure was off. And so I dated differently, and I kind of just took people for who they were. And it's like, all right, you're not the one, next. And then 2020 happened, and we all remembered what happened in 2020, or like some of us are trying to forget, it's all a blur, but there was this huge thing called the pandemic that happened. And so, locked in my house. I lived on my own at the time, and I had binge watched all of Netflix, all the streaming services and all that stuff. And, I was just thinking to myself, like, I think everybody did that, like, introspective work, right? Of finding out, where am I in life? Like, with everything that's going, am I where I wanted to be in life, right? And a lot of people, grappled with that, and dealt with that. And so for me, it was like this revelation. I had this time to think about it, and I realized, okay, I want to be a mom. Like I'm ready to be a mom. Like that was just so, like, that's the only thing. I mean, all my accomplishments, business accomplishments, certifications, achievements, awards, all that stuff, all that was great. But I'm like, okay, what, like, this is the next part. This is the next chapter for me. And because I had frozen my eggs and I was so empowered, I was like, okay, well, half of the work is already done. Like the eggs are already there. And so I'm still single. So all I need is that other, biology, like that other matter. And I'm like, oh, sperm bank, like, let me just do that. And so I reached out to the clinic again. mind you, now at this point, this is, late 2020. And I reached out to the clinic and asked, hey, do you guys allow, I don't think I worded it that way, but it was a concern, like, are you guys able to help single mothers become pregnant with via IVF? Because you hear the stories about adoption where they're like they'll only let couples or married couples, like they don't really, so I thought the same thing, like, oh, are they like gonna agree against the fact that I'm a single parent? I'm like, of course, welcome, come. And I was like, yay. And it was just so liberating. And that was how I decided, that's when it happened. So the actual moment when I was like, okay, this, like, I'm ready, my daughter's ready. And I'll talk about that a little bit, how I just knew I was having a girl. I knew what she looked like. I knew everything. I just knew I was having a girl. But the moment was, I was, again, 2020, we're all in locked down, whatever. And I remember taking kind of like a nap. And I say kind of because it was almost like I was aware that I was there, like like my presence, but I was not fully awake. But I was laying on the couch and my arm was hanging off the couch, and I heard a little slap on my hardwood floors, like a baby crawling. And then I felt her tug on my hand. And I woke up like, where's my daughter? Wait, was I pregnant? When was I pregnant? When did I have a baby? And I'm like, literally, it was just like all in a matter of like seconds of like, where is she? Like, she just tugged in my hand. Where is she? And I'm like, wait, when was I pregnant? When did I deliver a child? And that's when I knew that she was ready for me and I was ready for her. And again, that's when I made that call to the clinic. And so by July 2021, I was in Barbados starting the process. So yeah, so that's where it all began. And that's when I decided, like, I can do this. I've always been very independent and be able to do things on my own. And this is just right in line with who I am. Like, I don't think it gets more independent than that, just having a child on your own.
That's so true. What I'm actually interested in when you talk about all of this is like the step to actually deciding that you want to be a solo mom. Like, is there anyone else in your surroundings, your environment that were also or was also a solo mom at some point, or how did this thought like pop
That's
up
a
in your mind?
great question. So, I think it just kind of popped up in my mind, but when I look back, I don't know if maybe it was like subconscious wiring, or because I don't know if you know this theory of like how your brain can literally observe so much, but you only process like 10% of it. So I'm thinking that my brain picked up on something, and so I had a friend of a friend who was a single mom by choice. And it's like I felt like I kind of knew of her story, but she and I were not really that close. So, and she's not as open as I am, but I mean, she's obviously open about her daughter, but I don't think she's open, very vocal of how she did it. But I remember when I was telling my friend, okay, like, my closest friends, like, okay, guys, this is my decision, what I've chosen to do. I want to be and actually I didn't even know the term single mom by choice. I was just like, I'm ready to be a mom through
Yeah.
donor assistance.
Yeah.
And that friend was like, oh, you should talk to so and so, she's also, whatever. So I reached out to her on Facebook, and she's like, oh, you should join this Facebook group, Single Moms by Choice. And I was like, oh, there's a whole community. And I joined the group. I mean, thousands and thousands of women who have done this throughout the years. And I mean, when I joined the group, I mean, there are women who are grandmothers now who were single. So that tells you how far back this has been going. And I point that out because recently there was this a well-known person who called it a trend. She was like, oh, the single moms by choice trend, and I kind of took offense to that. I'm like, this is not a trend. This is a decision. This is a lifestyle. And it's been ongoing for years, like this isn't new. And so yeah, so then I joined that community, and I think I've always been one to, I don't want to say go against the grain, but I've always done what I had to do to get what I want, right? But what I mean by that is I'm not looking for anyone else's approval. I'm not looking to see, oh, who else did it, but there was a level of comfort and yeah, a level of comfort that came with knowing that there's a whole community of women that have already done this and are doing it. It makes you feel less alone. It provides a resource where you can ask questions. So it definitely made it easier. And I guess I don't want to say more welcoming because like I said, I would have done it whether this community existed or not. But again, it did help to have that. And I'm one of those people like, oh, if they can do it, then I can do it. And so with that, personality and character, like it helped. And so yeah, so then it was almost like after I made a decision, then I found out, okay, there's all these other women who've done it. I had this whole community of support and stuff like that. So yeah, but I can't say there was anyone like really close to me who did it. Obviously, I mean, I know single moms, but they're not single mom by choice, right? They're married or, whatever, and spouse, divorced, passed away, whatever. So that if anything was like, okay, well, if they can do it and it wasn't planned and they could survive and provide for their child, then imagine how much quote unquote easier it'll be for me who's planning it and has a mindset and is ready for this. Like, this is what I wanted. It didn't happen to me. I made it happen. And I think that's a drastic difference, which I think in one of the questions that you had listed, I'm pretty sure I'm going to come back around to that to that discussion.
Yeah. But this whole community of solo moms, did it make you more like sure of your decision, or?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. It made it feel a lot more attainable. They help with things that maybe you hadn't thought of. I mean, as simple as like, hey, how do you handle daycare? Like, what is that for you? Or, going out, still having a social life. What's that? So, you're able to ask these questions and do this. So I think the community is very important for women who are thinking about this journey. It's really good to have, but for me, the biggest thing was my own mindset. Like I said, I was going to do it regardless and I was going to make it work regardless. I mean, I've had so many challenges in my life growing up that I've overcome and stuff. So, I'm like the type to figure things out. That said, I'm so happy for the community. I'm so happy that other women have been open about it and are sharing their stories. And that's why I'm sharing my story for that next woman who didn't know that there's a whole community of single moms by choice, who didn't know about all the, the steps and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely, it definitely helped. It just helped make it easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so great. I think it's like you just sound so like full of energy and like everything, like the way that you just talk about all the things. It really just like almost makes me proud of it as well.
Do it.
No,
No,
but it's
yeah,
just,
I'm
yeah, I
very-
think it's such a like I think it's such a great way to look at life and look at everything. And just like hearing you sharing your story, it really just like, yeah, warms my heart, even though I'm not a single mom. And yeah, it's just like everything around it. I think it's also like, yeah,
Yeah,
I just love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful journey. And I'll talk about more of that, I think, when we get to like the whole coaching thing and the mindset. Because I think there's a question of like like negativity around it and how I address it. So I don't want to skip the questions. I mean, we can, whatever, go with the flow, but I'll follow your lead.
So the next thing that is on the interview guide is making the decision. So what were your biggest concerns or fears before making the decision, and how did you overcome them?
Okay, so my biggest concerns were the financial aspect. Right? So not just the IVF of getting pregnant, but also like taking care of a child, right? So for me, I am a CPA, certified public accountant in the US, which is, I think most other countries call it a chartered accountant or, something like that. But so like finances come very easily for me, or understanding finances and planning your finances comes very easy for me. And so for me, it was just planning. And that said, there's still things that in retrospect, I probably would have done differently. But here I am, right? So for me, in the US, like healthcare is very expensive and IVF is just started being covered by insurance. But even with that, it was a very high cost. So I know is a concern for a lot of women. And so my response to that is look into your insurance to see if it covers it, like your employer, and your health insurance, or for me, in my case, was going overseas, going abroad. So IVF can cost like $25,000 US dollars in the US. And for me, everything, like the medication, and I did 2 rounds of IUI and a round of IVF. And IVF is how I got pregnant. So 2 rounds of IUI, IVF, so medication for all of that. Traveling, my airfare. When I first got here, I got an Airbnb, but now obviously I have a house that I rent. But everything came up to less than 20,000 US. Everything, like all my rounds, the sperm, the vials that I had to get, the getting my body prepared. So I did, acupuncture, massages, like the whole wellness package. And all that came to like under 20,000. So for me, it was just like planning and just thinking outside the box, right? And a lot of people do come here abroad. They come here to Barbados, and there's other places like, I can't speak to other clinics, so I don't want to say that, but I mean, I know people who go to Dominican Republic, go to South Africa, other places, right? For me, Barbados worked, and it was right there in the Caribbean. My family's from the Caribbean, so it was like just like a second home. And so for me, I just kind of thinking outside the box and being bold with it, right? So for me, I actually wanted to be completely untethered from America. So I actually sold my house in America, not for IVF, but just because I didn't want to be there anymore. So I sold the house. So, again, it's just how much do you want this, right? And so for me, I was willing to go to that extreme of like moving to a whole new country, planning and just saving and stuff like that. And just that, but I think now IVF is becoming more affordable as more clinics start to offer it, and stuff. And I know you mentioned like we're not going to talk about the nuances in America, because there was like it's so chaotic over there, right? Because right now, there was a period where they were kind of like attacking IVF, like trying to make it less accessible, and then all of a sudden last week there was like a headline of like they're pushing IVF, like, oh, we're trying to make it more affordable. So it's like, oh, okay, what's going on? Like, what is happening right now? Like, it's like I want to be happy about that, but I'm like, is there like an ulterior motive? Because just a few weeks ago, you all were like against IVF, and now all of a sudden it's IVF, IVF, IVF. So, anywho, it's all remains to be seen. But I know this is hopefully a global reach. So again, just for me, the biggest concern was that the financial concern. The second biggest question I had, and actually there was one time I did a speaking engagement, and then we did a Q&A, and the first question, which I was surprised about, because I thought the first question would have been the financial part. The first question was, how did I tell my family? And I was like, I just told them the same way anybody else would tell that, but I get that that's another concern for a lot of people, because, and again, why I share my story, because I want to make it normal. Like, I just want to normalize this. Like, there's different ways to start your family, and I just want to normalize this. And it brings me back to like growing up, how adoption was taboo. Right? Like people didn't like, I mean, you hear how many families or kids who didn't know they were adopted because their family was like hush hush, and now it's like, it's a good thing to adopt. And you know what I mean? So it takes time, but it takes people being open about it and having the discussions and bring more awareness to normalize it. And now you can, like, people were probably, yeah, I'm adopted, or, yeah, I adopted my child. Like, it's an open thing. So I want this to be that. I want it to be like, yeah, my daughter, I want her to be proud. I'm like, yeah, my mom had me by herself, so it's just, it's about awareness. But yes, the other concern is, how do people perceive it, or how do you, like, are you nervous about telling people? Not at all. And this is a decision I am so proud of. Dare I say, it's a boss move. You know what I mean? Like, I sound like I'm wearing a t-shirt, like I'm a single mom by choice, but if the conversation comes up, I'm happy to say, like, my daughter's daycare, we had a little event there, and all the other parents were there, and there were married couples, and guess what? There were women who were single, whose the fathers just didn't show up, and it's like, you're not going to look down on them. But I remember having a conversation with some of the mom, because it's a huge expat community, so people from all over the world, right? And so the question comes up, oh, what brings you here to Barbados or whatever? And it's like, okay, my job or this or that. And then, I get the question. I was like, oh, is your partner or your husband? And I'm like, oh, no, it's just me. I was like, no, it's just my daughter and I. Or, like, what brings you here? Oh, the clinic. I came to have my daughter. I came to have IVF. I came to do IVF. So I make it very casual. And sometimes you'll get the, oh, I didn't know. And sometimes you go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, tell me more. Or, oh, I know somebody else who did that, So my thing is I do, and what I talk about in my coaching, I talk a lot about the mindset. Because if I had any kind of doubt or any part of me, wasn't sure that this was the route for me, then yeah, I probably would be concerned about what other people say. But you know what? This is something I'm proud of. I don't believe in making a decision that you're not proud of. And that's how everybody should live their life. No matter what you decide, whatever you decide and choose, you need to be proud of it. Otherwise, don't do it. Right? Why would you make a choice, make a choice or decision that you're not proud of? So for me, it just comes very easily. And if people ask questions, I'm happy to answer because I get it. It's not normalized. People automatically assume it's a man and a woman. And so I get that they're going to get questions. And I think I'm bright enough to know the difference between someone asking me questions out of curiosity and just wanting to know and be better, as opposed to someone who's asking me questions to judge me. And for those people, I can pick it up right there. And I can say I barely have it. And it's usually just on social media or like, people who don't know me or like, kind of like, you wouldn't dare say that to my face, right? And so I can block that off. I remember somebody made a comment once on one of my posts of like, modern feminism is ruining the family structure. Guess what I did? Delete, because you're not trying to have a dialogue. You're not trying to understand. You're judging me. You don't, you know what I mean? And so in that scenario, I don't have to engage. I probably never run into you in my life. And guess what? If we were in the same room, you wouldn't dare say that to my face. So delete. I'm not engaging. But then I do have people who are generally, I remember somebody, he told me, he's like, look, I'm a cisgender white man. I don't know. I really just want to ask, like, do you think your kid is missing out by not having a father? And he said, I don't mean to be judgmental. I'm just really curious because this is how I was brought up. And I appreciate that. And guess what? I engaged with him. And by the end, he was like, I totally get it. I respect your decision. Thanks so much for taking the time to answer. So I'm totally open for that dialogue. I will not take anyone judging me for this decision or any decision in my life. And so yeah, there might be some negativity, but chances are they're not going to say it to your face. It's going to be on social media or whatever, like some distant thing. And guess what? You have the power to delete, block, unfollow. You have the right to do that. and I will. But so far, I mean, I've had nothing but like, positive interactions, even, some of my friends who are married, like their husbands, if we all go out, their husband's a whole lady and stuff like that. And I'm totally okay with that. Right. But I definitely am not raising my daughter to feel like she's missing something, because I grew up with divorced parents. I was raised by my grandmother. And if anything, I have more issues, and stuff with relationships because of the fact that both my parents were alive. They divorced and they were alive, but they chose not to be in my life. Whereas my daughter can say, my mom not only chose me, but she wanted me so much that she had me by herself, and anybody who meets my daughter is just like, she's the most confident little girl ever, and so for me, again, back to that mindset of like owning my decision, and raising her in a way to know that she is loved, she is wanted. Mommy wanted her so bad that she figured out how to have her by herself.
If we go back to like your friends and your family, so you talk a lot about the fact that you really have a strong mindset, and I can tell by the way that you talk. But did they also like react in the way that you like perceive it? Like, did they also all react just positive?
So I can tell. I never had anyone be outright negative. I don't think anybody was like, Lee, are you sure you shouldn't do it, whatever. But I do feel, well, I think, first of all, remember, I made this decision at the time. I think I was 37 by the time 36, 37 when I decided to start the journey, right? I'm 37. So by this point, I think most of my family was just like, oh, finally she's having a kid. And I don't think they really cared that how I was doing it. I think they were just like, finally, Caribbean culture is like, you have to have a kid, like it could be with a deadbeat husband, but you just need to have a kid. So I think it was more of that, like, oh, finally, we thought she just didn't want kids, So I think it was a lot of that. But I do think that it took a little bit for them to wrap their heads around it. But it wasn't like my cousins, like my generation. I think they were excited. They were just like, oh my God, you're going to be such a great mom. Amazing. Like, we're going to support it and all that stuff. My parents, like my dad, I think he was just like, I'm really happy for you. I can tell he kind of took a step like, okay, this is not how I envision it, but you know what? You've done so good in your life. I'm so proud of everything you've done. I trust you. You're going to be a great mom. And then there's some conversations I had. I remember having a conversation with one of my brothers. He made a comment, and it wasn't outright. It wasn't rude or explicitly like, I'm not, but it made me feel like, oh, is he going to treat my daughter differently because she doesn't have a dad? So I remember being on the phone with him, and he said something, and I can't remember what it was. And I just remember feeling kind of down. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll call you later. Like, I just wanted to get off the phone. And then, no, actually before that, on the phone, I was like, I hope you're not going to treat her differently just because she doesn't have a dad in a traditional sense. She's still going to be your niece. And then he was like, no. He's like, what do I look like treating a child any kind of way? Of course, I'm like, whatever. But it still wasn't like, it was still like this feeling like, oh, why did he make that comment? So we got the phone. And I remember just thinking to myself, oh man, like that was disappointing, but oh well, whatever. And then he sends me a text and was like, Lydia, I want you to know how much I love you. And I am so excited I'm gonna have a niece or a nephew, because at that time I didn't know if I was having he didn't know. I said I knew I was having a girl, so I was like, this is gonna be a niece. But he was like, whatever, he messaged like, I'm gonna love my niece and nephew. I'm gonna be the best uncle I can be. And he's like, but just please understand that this is new to me. I've never met anyone else who had a child by themselves. So this is new to me, but I'm gonna learn. And I mean, that just kind of like, I remember just like bawling, crying. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And that's my point of like, we need to be able to have these conversations because people mean well. They just don't know how to communicate it, perhaps. This is new to them. So they don't know what questions to ask or how to react. And I'm not going to tell any other woman who's on this journey that, oh, it's your job to educate people. No, your job is just to be a great mom, right? But I also say, just for your own peace of mind and your own internal health, that try not to take these things personally. And if you have an opportunity to educate somebody, or dare I say, put them in their place, then do it, right? And then move on. But yeah, it's just being able to have these conversations and like kind of, like I said, take the opportunity to educate people. It's not, just until it's normalized. And even me as a single mom, my choice, the other day I was talking to a kid, someone in ladies in my daughter's daycare. And I said something about like, well, I'm going to tell your mom and your dad. And even me as a single mom by choice, my default was you have a mom and a dad, right? So imagine someone who's not even in my position. And I even caught myself. I was like, wow, for a single mom by choice, why did I assume that he had a mom and a dad, and his parents weren't even there. And so I was like, oh, I need to do better, right? So if I can do a little oopsie like that and assume someone has a mom and a dad, who knows? You probably had two moms, probably had two dads, probably had, neither, you just don't know. And so, in even in a single moms by choice group that I am, on Facebook, some of the concerns that women put are like, oh yeah, this family or this mom said something about the dad. And I was like, we cannot take offense. You know what I mean? Like, this is how this is all that's been shoved to us, right? Like, it's a mom and a dad, and we're learning, right? So like, for your own peace of mind, like, and just like trying to be present and healthy for your child, like, and happy, like, we can't just get mad at at other people, like, who don't necessarily know our story and our journey yet. So there's that too. But yeah, no, I can't say I've had a lot of negativity, at least not directly to me. I remember one friend told me about, like, a friend of hers that I knew. And when I had put it on social media that, like, I'm going to Maria's going to like, join me on this journey to becoming a single mom by choice. That this person, like, Facebook friends are not like your real friends, but it's somebody that I had met before, followed me on Facebook. And apparently she told that friend, like, oh my God, is Lydia crazy? And I'm like, no one's ever said that to me in my face, But my friend's very supportive, and she just kind of told her, like, Lydia of all people could do this. Like, don't worry about it. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna get people who don't understand, who are very stuck in their traditional path and traditional way, and that's okay. There's so many people in the world. There's so much square space on this world. If you're not welcomed and accepted in one corner of this space, of this world, move to another corner. I'm not here to try and change anyone's mind, or and make them understand me. That's not my job. If you generally have a question and want to know, I will try and facilitate. I will try and answer and all that stuff, but it's not my job to. And for me, I'm all about acceptance and just accepting people who they are. As long as it does not impinge on my ability to live, we're good.
If we move on to the next one about, like, society's view, I think we had some questions about what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding people have about single mothers by choice, and if you feel that the society has become more accepting of solo motherhood within recent years, or if it's still the same.
So the first question of society's misconception about single mothers by choice, that one is a great question. And I think the biggest misconception, because when people, it's almost like people just hear single mom and overlook by choice, right? And what I mean by that is that when they think of a single mom, they think of a woman who was in a relationship, or probably, or had a child unplanned, or even planned, with a man, right? And then that man left unexpectedly. So this woman had this plan in her head that I'm going to be with this man forever. He's going to take care of this. He's going to help me take care of this child. He's going to be part of our lives. And then boom, he changes his mind, or boom, he passes away, or boom. And it's just like chaos, right? This is not the woman's plan. And now she's trying to figure life out, on her own, and take care of this child on her own. And it wasn't planned. She planned on having dual income, her and this guy. She planned on doing things as a family during Christmas. And now this guy's gone. So now she has to figure out how to do Christmas. She planned on having this financial support from this partner. And now the partner is no longer there. So now she's struggling. Right? So people had this conception that a single mom is this woman who is struggling, who just didn't choose to have this child, and now is forced to take care of this child, and she's struggling, and she's on government welfare, and she's doing this, and she needs help, and she's living, that's people's misconception about a single mom by choice. And what they don't understand is that by choice is the key difference. I chose this. It wasn't, and that's why I said at the beginning, this didn't happen to me. I made this happen, meaning I planned for it. I planned mentally, physically, financially, emotionally. I planned to be ready for this child. In fact, I remember seeing the other day of a single mom by choice. And I mean, I think the way she did it was genius. It elicited engagement. But it even made me feel kind of, she's like, having a child DIY style, like do it yourself style. I'm like, this isn't a home improvement project. This is having a child. But you know what? She had thousands and thousands of views and stuff like that. So she got the engagement that she needed. But she went through the steps. She said, she did like a financial plan. She said, this is my financial plan, IVF, daycare, da, da, da. And she said, she looked at her income and said, okay, what can she cut back on to do that? Then she's like, okay, she looked into the donors and picking the donors and da, da, da. And then she picked the clinic, and then, she moved it. I want to say she like moved to another neighborhood that's more affordable or something like that, right? So she literally listed all these ways in which she planned. I mean, financial plan, emotional plan, everything, right? That is more than some couples do, right? Some couples don't talk about finances. They don't talk about how we're going to raise this child, what religion, what school, what that. Some couples don't do that. And here she is saying, listing all the ways in which she planned to have this child. And people were just like, single moms, like, why would you choose this? Da, 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 stop. And it's like, okay, like there's a disconnect here, right? And it's like you associated this, all you saw was single mom, and you thought, oh, she's gonna struggle. Why is she bringing this child into this world to struggle? And let me tell you, there were studies, Harvard study that says all a child needs to be successful, or to be well-rounded, or emotionally intelligent, is one adult that provides for them, right? And provides that emotional stability and all that stuff. So here I am, like, doing all that for my daughter, and she's a happy kid. And I think that is the biggest misconception, that people they just kind of overlook the by choice part. They don't realize that by choice means I planned for this. I prayed for this, and I got myself financially ready for this, right? This is not a scenario where I was caught off guard and now this child's going to suffer for it. No, my child is such a happy child, in fact, people are always like, oh my God, she has such a social life, because I'm like, I didn't bring her into this world to just sit in the house all day. No, we go out. She has swim lessons. She does gymnastics. We go on, festivals. We were at a festival yesterday, and, she was seeing animals and playing with horses and stuff like that. This is all planned. This was all part of my journey. And I want to take a step to say, like, even single moms who didn't choose this, where like they thought they're going to have a partner, they still do a great job. So anyway, so that to answer your question, that I think is the biggest misconception. And not just misconception, but I think that the other thing another misconception is that I think people think that as a single mom by choice, that I'm anti-family, right? Or anti-men. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. My brother is an amazing man, right? So I'm not anti-men. Like I always say, like, for me, this journey was, I was ready to be a mom. I was not married. I was not in a committed relationship. And so I decided I could do this. I could do this on my own. So I did it. It wasn't like I hate men. I never want to deal with men, blah, blah. So there is that misconception as well. And the idea that being a single mom by choice means I'm anti-family. My daughter and I are a family, and I thought about it, like, for Christmas. This was our first Christmas by ourselves. Last Christmas, we had family over who visited us from Barbados. So this is our first Christmas by ourselves here in Barbados. And, people are just like, oh, what are you going to do? Are you going to go to someone's house? But I'm like, no, like, the same way a family wakes up on Christmas and they open gifts together. Well, like, my daughter and I, we are a family. We're going to wake up on Christmas Day. We're going to open Christmas gifts together. We're going to, eat our Christmas dinner together. Like, we are a family. So this idea that being a single mom by choice means you're anti-family is another misconception. We are a family. Families come in different shapes and sizes. And who knows, like, this is how my family started. It might grow where I do meet somebody and we get married. Who knows? And he may have a kid, himself, and we become a blended family. Like, it's not this I'm not anti-family. Like, I just consider my daughter and I a family. So those are like I would say the 2-3 top misconceptions about single solo motherhood.
And if you look at the society, do you think it has become more accepted to be a solo mom today? Or do you think there's still a lot of room for improvement?
Well, I feel like there's always room for improvement. I mean, like I said, it was recently, maybe a few months ago, where somebody who's very, dare I say, influencer? I don't know. I don't really want to give her that title because she just spews hatred for, like, she just hates everybody who's not her, basically. But she's a well-known figure, public figure, and she kind of attacked solo motherhood. And in fact, she even took a clip of my daughter and I from my social media and used it to spew her hatred and negativity. And that's how I even knew that she had like this campaign of like whatever. So definitely there's work to be done. And I think for me, I just wish that people would be more open to having a conversation as opposed to just judging. And so, like, in her case, when she took my clip, had her or anyone on her team reached out to me and say, hey, look, we would like to interview you and whatever, even if she was like, ask me questions that kind of came off judgmental, but at least let's have a dialogue. But you just made a decision, a choice, or this judgment about me without even knowing anything about me or any other solo mom whose content she used. And so it's so definitely there's work to be done. And I can't really compare a before and after because once at the time I decided to become a solo mom, I had never heard of the term before. So it's not like I did research or heard people talk about it. I think I just knew of other single moms. I knew the stigma around single moms, but I'm like, okay, I know a lot of single moms in my life who did really, really good. So I've always been one to look at the positivity and just like had a positive outlook on other people and try not to judge. So I don't think I was exposed to anything. So I can't really compare like, oh, before I made a decision and now or years ago. But again, based on the experience I had just a few months ago, obviously there's still work to be done. And I think it's the same, work that needs to be done with the LGBTQ community, right? It's like they've come a lot, like that, has come a long way, but we still have a lot of work to do. Racism, we've come a long way, but still a lot of work to do. So I think you're always going to have these people who just don't understand, and rather than try to understand, their default reaction is judge, right? And so there's always going to be work to be done, but I'm going to do my part to, again, kind of share like this is a beautiful journey. Like my daughter is a product of God. Like this, like, what I mean? Like you can't look at my daughter and say, oh no, this isn't a gift from God. She is totally a gift from God. She's amazing, so yeah, there's of course there's a lot of work to be done.
All right, perfect. So I think before we move into the next part where we talk a lot more about your business and your coaching and everything, I think first of all, I want to hear if you have anything you want to add, like to your story, or else I would like to start with the fact that you maybe share what advice you would give to other solo moms, like from a mom perspective, and what advice you would give to other solo moms from like a more coaching perspective.
Right.
So like make the transition into that. But before that, I just want you to give the chance to, like, if there's anything else that just pops up to your mind that you want to share about your journey, or anything.
I mean, okay, so there are just like so many tips and stuff that I like to talk about that obviously from a single mom by choice perspective, but that also can apply to any mom or any parent, right? Of just having having a healthy relationship with your child, and building that confidence. And you heard me throughout this whole interview how I talk about mindset, right? For me, even in my financial coaching, with my business, with people who are business owners, mindset is key, right? Because once the mindset is there, the foundation, and you decide internally, I am going to be happy during this entire journey. I am going to be peaceful during this entire journey. Once you have that mindset, it helps you navigate every area and every challenge that may come up. So for example, when I said I was going to be happy and I'm going to be peaceful, I mentioned to you that I did 2 rounds of IUI before I did IVF. So I did 3 rounds of assistance, right? Before I had my daughter. It wasn't like I went into each round like, no, at one point I felt so anxious and I felt disappointed. And cause like, my first round of IUI, all the numbers were there, right? The number of my follicles and the size, the number and quality of the sperm. I was just like, the nurse who did the IUI, who did the insemination, obviously the clinic, they can't say, oh, we guarantee pregnancy, right? They can't say that because there's so many different factors. But she basically was like, I would be so surprised if you have to come back and do this again, right? So I walked out of there like, oh, I'm totally pregnant. I was like, I went to a bar right across the street and like, oh, you want to drink? I was like, no, I can't drink. I'm pregnant. Like I literally just did I was just so confident that it worked, right? Big fat negative, right? And so I remember just feeling like really disappointed. I'm just like, there's no reason why I shouldn't have, like it should have worked. And I remember, going through the grieving process in literally 15 minutes. I was disappointed, like, no, let me do another pregnancy test. Let me do another test. The denial, but I did everything right. The bargaining, or, all phases in like 15 minutes. I cried and let it out. And I was like, okay, you know what, Lydia? You knew that there was a chance that it may take multiple tries. Dust yourself off. Let's try again. And so
how did you overcome that? Like, because it sounds that you overcame it actually like very well compared to maybe a lot of others. Like, how did you overcome it? Was it all about mindset, or how did you like kind of, if it took three trials, it's also like a lot, I think, to go through. If it doesn't like happen in the first round, like I think it's very like hard on your mindset overall.
Mentally, emotionally, all of it. So I think again back to mindset, right? So I said I was gonna do peaceful, be peaceful, and I mean I knew. I always go into things with positivity. So with that positivity, I'm like, oh, I know I'm gonna get pregnant. Like I had to mentally prepare and bring it into the universe that I'm gonna get pregnant. So speak it into existence. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. And so that's what I was doing. Like I said, I went to the bar right across the street from the clinic, and I was like, no, I'm pregnant. I can't drink. No, I'm pregnant. I have to be careful. I was like kind of trying to speak it into existence. But at the same time, I did know that it could take multiple tries, because with IUI, I believe IUI was like, at the time was only like 36% chance of being successful. And so with that in mind, I'm like, okay, I know that it can take multiple tries. In fact, I had bought 4 vials of sperm because I knew it could take multiple tries, right? So once I got that negative, I was disappointed. I was sad. And for me, it was allowing myself to feel all the emotions, right? So I wasn't like, oh, you shouldn't feel this way, you should have known, blah, blah. I didn't judge myself. I was like, you know what? You were looking forward to this. It is a disappointment. You have the right to feel sad, but you knew, so you had the other vial. Let's try again, Lydia.
Yeah. After you got this second negative test, so like how did you feel then?
Yeah, so it was the second round of IUI that was unsuccessful. That's when I started to feel the anxiety, because at this time, and honestly, it wasn't even like anxiety that, you know what part gave me the most anxiety? And this is being completely honest, was the fact that I had been so public about it on social media. And it was almost like I felt like I was letting everybody down. That was the part that gave me anxiety, believe it or not. It was this part of like, oh man, I told all these people I was going to be pregnant, and now I got to tell them it hasn't worked again. And then I think the second part was like, oh God, I'm getting older. I need, I want to do this. And so that was the part that was giving me anxiety. But I had to go back to my mindset, and I journaled a lot. Those are like, so I'm dropping little tips and stuff, right? For me, it was journaling and making sure I had someone to talk to. And so I would definitely recommend like a therapist. In fact, the clinic required that you do a consultation with a like a therapist before you start the journey, to make sure you ask me questions, which I'm so glad I did. And it's funny because when they told me it was required, I almost felt like I was going to go into that consultation like, oh my God, is she going to like tell me whether I'm fit to be a parent or not? You know what I mean? I was like almost in defense mode. I was like, am I going to have to prove to this woman that I'm ready to be a mom? But it was so much deeper than that. She addressed fears that I had that I didn't even realize were issues. Like I remember one time, like I went to use a toilet and I was like, oh my God, is there a snake coming out the toilet? I'm like, why did I even think that? And she's like, no, it's because your mother instincts are already kicking in. And now you're always looking like, am I at risk? Am I safe? Right? Those are your mother instincts kicking in. And actually, there I was thinking she's going to tell me like, you're not ready to be a mom. And here she is telling me like, you're totally a mom already, and so it was such a great experience to have to talk to someone about my fears and the things that I didn't realize were, so I definitely recommend that you speak to somebody. But that was like at the beginning of the journey. So a second IUI didn't work. I had like my cousins who I had, actually one of my cousins had just gotten pregnant. And so she was, pregnant and all that stuff. And so I would talk to her about this, my journey. I would journal, talk to the clinic. So I was feeling really anxious after the second round of IUI. And then I thought to myself, you know what, Lydia, you said that you're going to do, this is going to be peaceful, right? And right now your body's not at peace. So perhaps let's take a break. And that's what I decided to do. I said, you know what, this is God's way of saying, take a break, take care of yourself. I'm on this new island, get to know the people, enjoy the island and stuff. So I even dated. I even like met somebody and I was dating for a little bit. Nothing serious, but it was fun. I mean, I was like on a yacht every weekend. I really enjoyed the island and meeting new people. And then I like met this whole beautiful group of friends that were just so supportive of my journey. And I trusted that I would know when I'm ready to try again. And before I come in, talk about having a plan, right? So I always said, you know, my plan was I'm going to do 2 rounds, up to 2 rounds of IUI. Mind you, I always knew the first round was going to work. It didn't. But I thought, okay, if it doesn't, and this is I communicated with this clinic even before. That's why they told me get 4 vials of sperm. Because I always said, okay, I'm going to do 2 rounds of IUI. If after 2 rounds it doesn't work, then I'll do IVF. Because IVF at the time had more of like a 67% chance of success rate. So success rate jumps, right? So then that was the plan. So after the second round of IUI, I was like, okay, you know what? Let's take a step back. Let's reassess. Let's just enjoy life, enjoy the island. And then I knew that I could trust my body and my mind that I'll know when I'm ready to do IVF, right? And so, like I said, I enjoyed the island. I dated for a little bit, myself. And then in I want to say June and July the following year is when I felt like, okay, I'm ready. So I reached out to the clinic and I was like, okay, when I'm ready to start IVF, what's the process, right? And so we put the plan in order, like, you know, when the cycle ends or when your cycle starts, let us know. Then we're going to get on medication, then we're going to do that and all that stuff. And then so I went through the original plan with IVF was that they were going to extract the eggs. Like it was in August, and then 3 days later I would do the transfer, right? The embryo transfer. And so by the time I went to do my egg retrieval, so mind you, remember I already had my eggs frozen. But because my numbers were very, very similar, even 3 years later, that we decided let's do fresh eggs. So I kept my eggs that were frozen, and we said we're going to do fresh eggs. So I went through the egg retrieval process again, which was so intense, so intense. So get yourself mentally ready for that, right? I mean, I remember one time coming home from the groceries, I was carrying like heavy groceries, and I put the groceries on the counter, and I looked down, and it was like. I sent a picture to my brother. He's like, "Were you shot?" He thought I got shot. It was blood everywhere through my blouse, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Was I walking around the grocery store? You know, so with all the injections, like you know, you're on blood thinners, so it's easy to bleed out from where you inject yourself. So imagine just like looking and like, oh my God, am I dying right now? Like, do I need like a blood transfusion? So that's just to give you an example, right? And so the daily injections and stuff like that. And as a solo mom going through IVF, the experience is different from somebody who's going through it with a partner. So make sure you have a good community of people. I had remember the group of friends that I told you I made during this period? Guess what? They were the ones coming to help me with injections in my butt. So you know, it's just, you know, make sure your community is going to look different from that of a woman who's married or has a partner, right? And you got to be okay with that. So it was my girlfriends who came to help me and like, you know, help me inject in my buttocks. But anyway, so there's that getting mentally physically ready. So you know, going through that journey and going through the egg retrieval. And so back to the IVF story. So on the day before I was doing my egg retrieval, they do the ultrasound and they realize that my what's it called? There was like an overstimulation, right? And so I had a lot of fluid. And so they told me, all right, we're going to retrieve the eggs, but we cannot do the transfer in 3 days because we have to calm your uterus down, right? And that was the first time that I cried. That was the first time during my whole journey, because it started July 2021. Now we are August 2022, excuse me. And that was the first time. And mind you, by this time, the 2 failed IUIs and everything I had been through, my nurse coordinator already knew that I was like, oh, you're resilient. Like, oh, it didn't work. Let's go. Right. So I think at this appointment, she was just like, okay, next, and whatever. And then she looked up and I was literally just bawling on her desk. And and that's when she was like, she's like, Lydia, I've never seen you cry. So she comes around, comforts me and all that stuff. And I was like, I think right now I'm just like, it's so close. Like this is the closest I've been. Like literally 3 days, you're going to tell me like you're going to do an embryo transfer, and now I have to wait, you know. And I think that was the first time that I kind of just cried. So she comforted me, and then part of it was probably all the hormones that I had been injecting. So I kind of, you know, realized that too. But like I said, I'm really big on allowing myself to have my emotions and feel my emotions and process them rather than just tell myself like, oh, it's just the hormones, get over it. I process my emotions. So that's another tip I would give. Allow yourself grace to process emotions because it's an emotional journey. And so anyway, so she comforted me, and they explained that, listen, this is for your protection and your baby's protection, right? Because if we do the embryo transfer while you have all this fluid, it could lead to a miscarriage, and she's like, so let's just wait a couple more months and we'll do the transfer, and then we'll have a better result. And I just, again, the whole mindset of like, everything happens for a reason. I'm choosing to be peaceful. I'm choosing to be happy. I'm choosing that everything happens for a reason. And then sure enough, so we scheduled for October. And around between that time, I had, my body was able to heal from all the injections and all that stuff. And I was able to kind of like focus on work and kind of rebuilding or repurposing my firm to be able to be a single mom, right? And so I was like, okay, everything happens for a reason. So I took this time to kind of work on stuff, just keep my mind busy. So come October, get back on my medication regime and then did my embryo transfer, and the rest is history. I was pregnant. So when you do IVF, which I'm sure you probably know at least this level, is like, they tell you do your transfer and they tell you like 14 days later do a pregnancy test. I did mine a whole week early. I did mine 7 days later. I was like, and I'm actually surprised I lasted that long before I did the test. And I remember doing the test, and it was like a faint line. I was literally like squinting, like And I even sent a picture to my cousin, like, "Do you see the line?" She goes, "I think I see the line." And then that day, I so happened to have to go to the clinic anyways to pick up some more medication. And I told them, I was like, "Hey, I took the test early, but I'm pretty sure I see a faint line." And I brought my pee stick in a Ziploc bag, and I was like, "Look!" And they're like, "Yeah, we think we see it." They're like, "Do you want to do a blood test and confirm?" I said, "Sure." And then we did the blood test, and that afternoon they called me like, "Yep, you're pregnant." And I was just like, I fell to my knees, and I was like, "God, thank you so much." Like, it was almost like one of those like, oh my God, like reality, like boom, like this is it. This is like the culmination of the last 2 years, is like, here it is. Now the next part of your journey, this is the next chapter of the journey of like, now you're going through pregnancy, and then before you know it, there's going to be a little human here. So it was very, very, that part was magical, and it was just worth the wait. It was totally worth the wait.
Oh, it makes me so happy to hear. It's such a lovely story. It really is.
I love reliving it. I love
Yeah, if you can just in short, maybe just like short down like the part. So what happens like after you got pregnant, and what happens like after you gave birth? Like just like in short, like how did you feel?
Yeah.
How was it?
Yeah.
If you'd like to share it.
So pregnancy was actually very amazing. I think I'm one of the few women who had who I don't want to say the few women who had a positive pregnancy, but one of the few women who is totally okay with saying it was a positive pregnancy. 'Cause I think some women wear like the struggle as a badge of honor. And then some women are like really quick to tell you all the negative experiences that you had and all that. So talk about the tips that when I work with women, whether they're single moms by choice or just a mom, like someone who's pregnant. I actually had the conversation this past weekend with somebody who just found out she was pregnant, or she just told me she was pregnant. I was like, women are gonna, for some reason, feel the need to tell you about all of their horror stories and tell you, oh, watch out, this is going to happen to you. Oh, be careful, blah, blah. I'm like, just for me, what I did was I tell them, hey, I appreciate that was your journey, and I'm sorry you went through that, but either tell me how you survived it and like tips that you can give me, or just not tell me, because my journey is my journey and I'm choosing to be happy. I know what it's going to be. Obviously, my whole body is going to change. I'm growing a human. Of course, things are going to feel weird, but I don't want to hear these horror stories. So I chose to be very selective about who I allowed to, have these conversations with me. So for me, I had a beautiful pregnancy. In fact, the first, I would say 10 weeks, had it not been the fact that I went through IVF, I probably wouldn't have even known I was pregnant. I probably wouldn't even know. And so, like The whole morning sickness, I had some of it, but it wasn't horrible. Second trimester, a breeze. Third trimester, I mean, you're obviously heavier, so like my lower back was starting to hurt. So you start to feel things like you can't find. For me, I couldn't really find a position to sleep. It's like I sleep on one side and I get numb. I get on the other side. She didn't like it when I slept on one side, so I feel like her little body pushing. And I was like, yeah, I knew she was gonna be a bossy baby from when she was inside. So yeah, so there's that. So pregnancy, I mean, it's what you make of it. Again, back to mindset, things that happen. I mean, the first few weeks, my first pregnancy. So I had some bleeding and I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, is this a miscarriage? Because you hear like anything can happen in the first trimester. But then, I went to my OB, he comforted me. From then on, it was just like smooth, right? I just, whatever. I made sure I use resources. Like there's an app I use that kind of told me what to expect every week of my pregnancy. That was tremendous. I remember one time I almost passed out in my bathroom, and I just made it to my room, lay down, but I didn't panic because my app had told me that around this time, your uterus is expanding and you're pressing against other organs, so you might feel lightheaded. So because I knew what to expect, I was fine. I just lay down, I put the AC on, drink some water, and then I was fine. So yeah, pregnancy was beautiful. Then I did end up doing a C-section, a scheduled C-section. I tried to go natural as possible, but my OB, because he says my age and this and that, whatever, all these different factors, he wanted to do a C-section, and I try to push as much as I can. But during the last trimester, like the last, like I was already 8 months pregnant. At that point, I was like, doctor, take the baby out. I don't care. I was like, let's do the C-section. Just take her out. I'm like, I know this out. And so I did a scheduled C-section, which I would tell any mom, you do whatever is good for you. Because I was like one of those, like, listen to other moms about like, oh, natural birth, you don't want to do medication. And I even paid for hypnotherapy and all that stuff. And finally, I was like, you know what? If this is what my doctor's telling me to do, I'm going to do it. I mean, you just say C-section because I was like, heaven forbid something happens and, like my doctor told me, you know what I mean? So I get it. If you want to do natural birth, by all means, have fun. No one's going to judge you. If you want to do medication, do your medication. If you want to do a scheduled C-section, do a scheduled C-section. For me, I was like, I'd rather a scheduled C-section than have an emergency and have to do an emergency C-section because that would cause me more chaos and panic more rather than just schedule. So it was a peaceful journey. I checked into the hospital 6:30. By 8:30, my daughter was in my hand. And it was just a smooth process. I went to recovery for about 45 minutes before I could start to feel my limbs again. And then they put me in my room and I was holding my daughter, like, and just like that on a Monday morning. So that was the pregnancy. And then for me, if you have family that can help you, great. I love my family, but I knew that I would be more peaceful if I hired help. Meaning, because like family, they love you, but then they're, especially if they're helping you, you're not paying them, they're going to be like, oh, do things my way or blah, blah, blah. So for me, I found it more peaceful to just hire help. So from the day I brought my daughter home from the hospital, I had a nanny, a full-time nanny. And so I had a full-time nanny during the day that helped me with the cooking, the cleaning, help you clean bottles and stuff. She's the one that gave the name. She's like, she's my postpartum partner, right? And she's like, just you hold your baby, and that, and I'll take care of everything else. So there was that. And then in the evenings or overnight, I had a former midwife who would come in overnight and stay with me. So as a solo mom, I do recommend that you have it as part of your financial plan to have help. But I mean, again, I know another solo mom whose parents were very helpful. And so she didn't need hired help because her parents were very hands-on, very respectful of her wishes and stuff like that. So if you have that community, great. For me, it made more sense to hire help. So the person who came overnight, honestly, she helped tremendously, right? But for me, having her was just more of a comfort. I still took care of my daughter. I was still the one who bathed her and fed her and all that stuff. And I slept when my daughter slept, but knowing that someone was there that, hey, can you go warm up the bottle while I hold the baby? at 3 in the morning, right? And so it was having that help. So I do recommend having that help around the clock, at least for the first few months. And then after that, after about 2 months, I went down to just having a nanny, because fortunately for me, I'm telling you, God loves me. My daughter slept through the night and still does. Sleeps through the entire night. And so I realized I didn't really need the nanny overnight. And so that is something I would definitely recommend, of having that help, right? So just because you're a solo mom doesn't mean you have to do this alone. And I think that's another thing that we have to keep in mind, that yes, we made a choice to have a child on our own, but doesn't mean that we can't expect help from other people, because married women get help too. Right. And they have a partner, but they still ask their friends for help, or so it's, would like help from their family. So when I say expect help, I don't mean like, oh, like I'm going to lose friends if they don't help me. But this idea that like, oh, because I chose to be a single mom, I shouldn't be able to ask for help. I think that's a mental block that we create ourselves, that we need to get over. We need to know, like, we deserve help. And we can ask for help. If people could help us, accept it. You're going to have people who are like, hey, do you need help? Do you want me to come hold the baby? Do you want me to come do this? And your instinct might be like, oh, no, I can't accept help because I chose to do this. No, take the help. And if anything, that's one of the things I learned during my journey, is that I have to be okay with asking for help and accepting help. Right? Because remember, this is, again, I'm very hyper independent. And like I said, having a child on your own is like such a boss, and like I'm super independent, mentality. So that was a challenge. That was something that I had to work on. And I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I allowed myself to ask for help and accept help. If somebody said, hey, look, do you want me to, I'm going to the grocery store. Can I grab anything for you? Oh God, the old Lydia would have been like, no, I got it. I'll go when I can. Now I'm just like, please let me send it to my list. And so, so there's that, and being okay to ask for help, and being okay to accept help when people offer it. I think that's a big thing. And if anybody makes you feel bad about asking for help because you chose to be a single mom by choice, then guess what? Those are not real friends. Those are people who don't care to help you and weren't going to help you anyways. Right. And they just want to make you feel bad about it. Like it's a way for them to rationalize the fact that they don't want to help by making you feel like it's your fault, or like you should handle it. So those are not good friends. And keep it moving.
So if you could give like 5 tips for women considering becoming a solo moms, what would those 5 top tips be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I'll just recap everything we talked about. So one is just the mindset of, making sure that you own your decision. It's going to help you navigate the negativity, the times where, you may feel like giving up. I personally, remember this question came up, did I ever feel like giving up throughout this journey? No. There were times where I was like, oh my God, why can't this be a little easier? Or God, like, this is tough. But never once did I feel like, okay, no, this is the wrong decision. Never once. I always just like, okay, well, what's the next step? Let me feel my feelings, and then let's go on to the next step to bring my daughter home. So the mindset of being at peace, the financial planning. I think that's the biggest concern. And I think like anything else in life, right? When you're planning a trip with your girlfriends, you guys plan out like what hotel you're staying at, how much it's going to cost, how we're going to split this. Am I going to get, like, do that with this journey? Where are you going to do IVF? Get price quotes, see if your insurance is going to cover it, your employer is going to cover it, daycare and all that stuff. Start looking around, how much does daycare cost? And so anything is achievable when you plan for it. So plan for the financials, make sacrifices, maybe give up the Starbucks for a little bit, make coffee at home, like little stuff like that, get a little side hustle right now while you still have the time, because those kids are going to take up all your time, right? Get a little side hustle, save your little safety net. Do that. So just plan, understand what the cost is going to be. How much money do you make? Do you make enough? Do you need to make more? Do you need to cut back on your expenses? Like, be creative with it, right? So there's a financial planning. There's building your community. So like I said, it may not be the community you expected or envisioned, but build your community, right? So for me, it was a group of strangers that I met when I moved to this island, as opposed to being my family or, the friends that I had back in Miami. So build your thing. And like for me, it was the biggest thing was finding mom groups, whether they were married or not. finding mom groups. And that was a big thing for me because I love mommy meetups and baby meetups and having play dates and stuff like that. And then, again, we're single moms by choice, but the motherhood experience is the same. So surround yourself with other moms, whether they're married or not. I guess in line with your community is like being okay with asking for help. Again, yes, you made a choice to be a single mom by choice, but it doesn't mean that you don't deserve help. And so make sure you're okay with asking for help and accepting help. Be vulnerable. It's okay. Motherhood is so vulnerable. I think that was something very helpful when I accepted the vulnerability, especially because most of us, when I look at the single moms by choice in the Facebook group and the things that they share, a lot of them are like, business owners or like high up executives, you know what I mean? Like these are very independent women. And I think that's one of the common traits that most of us have is that we're very independent. And we're successful in our own right. And so for us, asking help or expecting help is a bit of a foreign thing for us, right? We're used to like, challenges. What challenge? I got the solution, right? We're used to that. And so asking for help or accepting help comes foreign, but be okay with that. That's 4. And then what was 5? Just the like I said, it's emotional, physical, financial, everything, right? And so this is going to be an emotional roller coaster, and and it's exaggerated with all the hormones and injections that you're taking, right? So allow yourself to process your feelings. Show yourself grace, even postpartum. I went through a lot of challenges that I'm still dealing with. I would say I'm kind of at the tail end, but after having my daughter, my business kind of felt like it was falling to the side, right? Like it wasn't a priority, and so I could see it in my numbers. And I remember having to deal with that, the anxiety of like, oh my God, like my business is not doing so well and all that stuff. But I'm like, and it wasn't so much like it wasn't doing well. It's like, I didn't feel like I had the mental clarity, right? The Lydia who was like solutions oriented and, can find, there's no such thing as a problem. It's just a learning step, right? Or a little hurdle that you jump over. Whereas now I was like, oh my God, I had brain fog. I didn't know how to process these things. And so I had to give myself grace. And then you hear that sometimes it can take up to 2 years for a woman to feel somewhat like herself again. And I feel like I'm kind of getting there now. It's almost like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm still going through that phase where I'm like trying to give myself grace and kind of rebuild my business. So just giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to process your emotions. As women, we're always told like, oh, we're too emotional and that stuff. And it's like, well, so that what that translates to is not being able to process our emotions or judging ourselves because we have an emotion. Allow yourself to have an emotion, and your emotions is just process it. As long as like, give yourself a timeline. Like for me, I'm like, I'm not gonna let anything keep me down for, an extended amount of time. Like I need to process it. And if I can't process it on my own through journaling or talking to friends, then guess what? Get professional help. Talk to a therapist, because there is a lot like postpartum, and I think I might be going into like a 6th thing, but postpartum, a lot of people just think like, okay, you're either super, super happy, a great mom and all that stuff, or postpartum depression and you're thinking about killing your kids, like the 2 opposite spectrum. But there's so much in between that, right? So for me, I've been thinking lately that ever since I gave birth, the amount of times I think about death is insane, right? Becoming a mom after giving birth, you think about death so much, it's crazy. Right? So seek help, right? So there's in that in between. It's not that people just think it's 2 extremes, but there's and the reason why I'm able to be so open about this is because guess what? I'm not the only one. In one of my mom groups on WhatsApp, one of the moms came, she's like, I don't know who else to ask. I hope nobody would judge me, but here's how I've been thinking about death and and they call it intrusive thoughts, right? And when she posted that, the amount of other women who were like, me too, me too, me too, me too. I felt that alone made me feel better, because I thought I was by myself. I thought something was wrong with me. And so just knowing that you're not alone, that you're going to go through this, but just seek the help, talk to somebody about it. Talking about it is probably just like the first step. you're like halfway there. So yeah, those would be like my 5, 6 tips. I don't know how many I gave.
Oh, that's so amazing. Yeah, I think lastly, I really just want to like hear a bit more. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that you share and tell also like is part of your coaching.
Yeah.
That you do. I can kind of tell in the way that you talk. But I just want to hear like a little bit a little bit more about like your coaching part. Like, what is it about? Like, what do you like to share? What led you to start it? Like, how do you help other women? Like, what can what can people expect if they like
Right.
sign up to your coaching?
Right.
Like, what would you like, other people to like hear if they like see this, hear this? Like, what do you want to share with them?
So, okay, so I have different aspects, and usually I like to start with like a consultation, like 1 hour, and so there's an Ask Me Anything. I offer for an hour where you literally can just ask me anything. It's almost like this interview process, right? Where you can ask me anything. And so, so like all the questions you ask, like I said, I'm very familiar with them because these women ask that question. So, the financial planning, like what's it like, the emotions and all that stuff. So, and then once I get to after the Ask Me Anything, I can already tell like where you are on your journey, right? So if you are like, I'm still thinking about it, then you're probably just like the Ask Me Anything is probably gonna be very helpful. And in that one consultation, I've literally had women are just like that come from I'm thinking about it to, oh my God, I am certain this is what I want, right? And so that Ask Me Anything is very, very helpful. And I usually like to start with that. Now, I have 2 other solutions. So one is literally from A to B. So we talk about the mindset, like how, like what does it mean to your mind? Because it's easy to tell somebody, oh, your mindset, you need the right mindset, whatever. But you can hear, oh yeah, I need a good mindset, but how do you achieve it? Right. And then what happens when something goes unplanned and you revert back to your old ways, right? So I help with like daily things that you can do to help with your mindset, questions that you should be asking yourself, and questions that you need to face, right? Building your community, how you do that, how are you going to communicate to your family? Because I mean, that's one of the, like we talked about, like that's one of the concerns is like, how do you tell your family? Right. I had one woman, because I'm of Haitian descent, and the Caribbean culture is very, even if you're in an abusive relationship, that's what we expect you to be married and have a child and pop out kids, right? Like it's very like, so the idea of having a child on your own in that culture is like, what? How dare you be so progressive? So I remember a woman who was of Haitian descent, and when she found out I was Haitian descent, she's like, oh my God, like how did your family, whatever. And so, walking through that and like kind of like hand holding, like how are you going to do it? And then, honestly, do you need to? Are these relatives that you're going to be around anyway? You know what I mean? Like there's just so like, there's a family that you're born into, and there's a family that you could create. And so deciding like, how important is it for them to have to hear it from you versus, hey, just let them find out, right? So there's that. And then, so there's everything from A to B, and then like literally the financial planning, we go through high level. So I provide like templates of how to create your budget, how to compare to what you're making. And then I may help. And this part is actually what I do with my business coaching, of like, all right, if the, one of the solutions and one of the things that we realize is that, okay, we just need to make more money. All right, let's be creative in how we do it, like side hustles or all the things. So a lot of hand holding there. And then everything from like preparing your body for the process, and like how to make the phone calls and get quotes and understand your pricing, understanding your insurance and what it covers, what does that mean for you and your out-of-pocket expenses. And then what questions to ask. I've had people who just like message me on Instagram like, oh, I'm gonna have a consultation with the clinic. What's some questions I should ask? And so I help you with like figuring out what questions you should ask, what's important to you, what is something that, like for me, there's some things I want to know, but I'm like, is that going to change my mind or change my outcome? Then I don't need to ask it. But if it's something that's going to impact my decision or whatever, then ask it. So kind of help identify what you should be asking. And then getting prepared for motherhood. Right now, I am in that motherhood space. And so being able to help with like, how are you going to raise your child? How are you going to communicate to them about their family structure when they see other kids with, 2 parents or something like that? Like, what is a conversation? traveling with your kids. You know, before Lady, I was traveling so much. And even with her, I traveled a few times, but not as much. And I think part of it is because I live in paradise. So it's like, where else am I going to go? But we do actually have some trips planned for later this year. A long trip, so pray for me.
I'll do. Come to Denmark.
You never know, because I'm actually thinking about Barcelona and then going to see. So a friend in Barcelona and a friend in Vienna. And I know, like, once you're over in that side of the world, it's like so easy to get to the other countries. So if I go to Denmark, I will come. We'll take a selfie and you'll meet Lady. You're gonna love her. She's amazing. She's such an amazing little girl. Oh God, I love her. Like everything she does, I'm just like, I love you so much. You're like my best friend. Actually, this weekend we went to the beach and we were dressed alike. We had the bathing suit covers that match, and like we just killed the internet. Everybody was just like, oh my God, you guys are so cute. Anywho, so that's my coaching. And then I have another offering if people just want to focus on the financial side. Because like I said, I'm a CPA, so financials are like very, very important for me. So that one, as opposed to part of the bigger offering where I do I give you templates like a budget and the kind of like I give you the tools and then you go execute. The financial one where we focus on financial, I think it's like 4 or 6 weeks. I forgot which one is which. But that one is more hand holding. So that one, like we actually go through the budget together. We would look at your bank statements. We'll look at your pay stubs. We'll do it together. And kind of make sure that you feel confident and comfortable with this journey, going on this journey. So yeah, for some people, it's literally a matter of like making big, bold moves, like for me, like I said, I literally moved to a whole nother country to do this. Right. And so I'm not saying like, I'm telling every woman like, oh, move to another country. But the point is, like I said, I'm very solutions oriented. So if you're like, oh, I live in a community where daycare is outrageous and well, guess what? I may ask you, well, would you be willing to move to a neighboring community where it's more affordable and you'll be more comfortable and you can be more present for your child? Like, what is important to you? So it's really finding out and finding out where you can make sacrifices for the long-term, your long-term happiness and being able to provide for your child. And I keep looking this way because I have a picture of my daughter there. So like whenever she's my inspiration. So I'm just looking at her picture.
That's so cute. If you had like one advice that you could give to like yourself before you started this journey, what would that be?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Oh wow. Okay. I mean, I feel like I did such a great job with preparing for it. So I don't know if there's anything to change. I mean, there was like literally one thing that happened. Okay, so I guess my advice would be try not to make decisions while you're emotional. I think that's like I like when if I'm able to communicate and vocalize that, because I tend not to have regrets in my life. And because everything led me to where I am. But I mean, there's just one thing that like sticks in my head, like an expense that I incurred that in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have done at that time. And it was a huge expense. And so but I think it's because I did it out of emotion. And so that would be my advice is that, again, we talk about processing your emotions. Process your emotions and try to make decisions with clarity of mind. So I would say that was my biggest thing I would change, I guess. And that would be my advice. So because it's going to be emotional with all the hormones you're taking. It's going to be intense. Or it might be intense. I don't like to say it's going to be intense. It might be intense for you, but yeah.
Perfect. Well, I just looked at the interview guide and you actually came across a lot of the things without me asking. So I think it's like I have what I need. I just want to hear if there's anything else you'd like to share, anything you'd like to add. Anything.
Yeah, I think with my business, I talk about helping women with like the financial part and making income. So, because I have a lot of people who do just ask me questions on Instagram, and I try to answer as much as I can and provide as much free resources as I can. And so I just ask that anybody like kind of respect the fact that I do have a child to feed and I do have a whole business I'm running. And so as much as I wish, and you see this comes really natural for me, and I want to empower as many women as possible, but I still have to make a living. So please understand that if if you have certain questions, like do the Ask Me Anything. It's very affordable. It's only $175 US. or out. And I tell you, I remember the very first one I did, and actually I was still kind of testing it out. So I did it for free for this person. And after we're done, I said, just two things I'm going to ask you: give me a review and give me your honest opinion in terms of how much would you have spent for this? And she said, Lydia, I would have easily spent $250 for this, and I'm only charging $175. So I'm telling you, you're going to walk away with value. So that's more of like my spiel, you know, for to people understand, like, this is something I'm really passionate about, and I really wish I could just do it for free. And if I win the lotto, guess what? I would. So pray that I win the lotto. But other than that, you know, I think we touch on everything is just your mindset and believing yourself and knowing that it's achievable, and trusting yourself. Oh my God, the biggest thing, trust yourself. Oh my God, trust yourself. I think we are all born with like this divine gift, and society kind of chips away at it. And so reclaim your gift and trusting your instinct. Because I mean, when I tell you, people meet my daughter or see us and everyone's like, you're doing such a great job with her. Guess what? There's no manual. There's no manual on how to be a mom, but I trust my instinct. I pay attention to my daughter, I pay attention to myself, even to the point where sometimes where I feel overwhelmed, I literally call our nanny, because she's not with us full time anymore since my daughter's in daycare full time. But I will call my nanny and be like, can you just come for an hour? I just need a break from my daughter. Right? And that's another thing, like, people would judge you for feeling that you need a break from your child. No, we're not meant to be with anybody for 24/7. Like, you know, so yeah, sometimes I'm overwhelmed. My daughter comes home and she's just like whining, and I'm just like, I don't know you what. I fed you, I changed your diaper, you know, like, you have your toys. Why are you whining? I will call my nanny and be like, look, I just need an hour. And sometimes that hour means I go do groceries, I go take a walk by the ocean, or I just go sit in my room and watch Netflix, you know, in the next room. But I take that time for myself. So just listen to yourself, and be okay, and just be okay with society. Whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna judge you no matter what. You like, I mean, I'm killing it in motherhood, and there's still people who are probably talking crap about me, and it's all good. But my daughter's happy, and that's my biggest reward. So that's that.